We started this meeting in executive session, and as just a point of note, we will be returning to executive session to discuss contracts and settlement on an offer at the conclusion of this meeting. So I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:05. Mr. Catalano, could you please take roll?
Mr. Benford.
Here.
Ms. Crooked.
Here.
Ms. Hope.
Here.
Ms. Hogertle.
Here.
Ms. Kutner. Ms. Paoli.
Here.
Mr. Vecchio.
Here.
Vice President Seidel.
Here.
And President Sangelo.
Okay, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Mike, if you would, please read the statement concerning open public meetings.
Public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given by the Superintendent of Schools in the following manner. On January 15, 2021, notice of this meeting was posted on the interior of the school administration offices, 1 Lincoln Avenue, Haddonfield. Written notice was submitted and filed with the Haddonfield Borough Clerk, and notices were faxed to the Courier Post and mailed to the Retrospect newspaper.
Thank you for reading that. And we'll mention that the board is continuing its pledge and obligation to provide transparency to our constituents by recording this meeting, and all meetings are stored on our YouTube channel, as well as downloaded and reposted by the Haddonfield Civic Association. So let's move into item C, items for board information and presentations. So I turn the floor over to Dr. Criollo to talk about the tenure process.
Thank you very much. I will provide a brief overview of the evaluation and tenure process for the board. Certainly be happy to answer any questions that you might have. First, I guess a big picture view of this, regulations and procedures. Everything we do regarding observation and evaluation is regulated by the Teach New Jersey Act, which was then followed up by an Achieve New Jersey systems and committees that essentially put in place all the plans, policies, and procedures to implement the Teach New Jersey Act that was implemented in 2012. This is a near and dear project to me. I was a contributing member to the Achieve New Jersey Council when it was formed back in 2011. So what we essentially did, we came together over a 2-year period and developed how school districts in the state of New Jersey would be in compliance with the Teach New Jersey Act concerning observations, evaluations, and the tenure process for teaching staff members. So how do teachers and principals earn tenure under the law? Well, it's a 4-year process with an asterisk. The only exception to that is if a staff member has tenure in their current district and then moves to, say, an administrative position, the tenure process is 2 years. So that's the only exception there. But it's generally a 4-year process. To earn tenure, a new teacher must complete his or her district mentorship program during his or her first year of employment. After completion of the program, the teacher must be rated either effectively or highly effective in 2 of the 3 subsequent years. Tenure is earned on the first day of the 5th year. Similar process for administrators. Conversely, how do teachers and principals lose tenure under the law? Well, if any teacher or administrator is rated ineffective or partially effective in 2 consecutive years, according to the chart below, that employee may be charged with inefficiency. Tenure charges must be filed for individuals who earn consecutive ineffective ratings. And I know this chart is very difficult to see, but essentially what it outlines that if a teacher is ineffective in 2 consecutive years, the superintendent must file tenure charges, does not have any discretion on that. If a teaching staff member is ineffective 1 year and then partially effective in the 2nd year, the superintendent may file file tenure charges. So that was probably one of the most controversial aspects of Achieve New Jersey when it was implemented in 2012. One of the things it did do is strengthen a school district's, the superintendent's and the board's authority to remove a tenured teacher. All right, here's where the nuts and bolts of things, the evaluation of teaching staff. And again, everything is broken down. The rules and regs are a little different for tenured compared to non-tenured staff. For non-tenured staff, they have at least 3 formal observations a year. And when I mean formal, that it's the school administrator going into the classroom, doing a formal write-up, doing a formal scoring that becomes part of the teacher's record. A school administrator has to do at least 3, but can do as many as he or she really wants, within reason. There are some rules and regs regarding that. For example, you can't do a second observation until the post-conference of the first observation is completed. So of the 3 observations for non-tenured teachers, at least 1 requires a pre-conference. A pre-conference is when you sit down with the teacher, he or she explains the goals and objectives of the lesson and kind of takes the administrator through what he or she is going to observe during the lesson. Also, this includes, and this is not in the law, this is above and beyond what is required of us. We have 1 mid-year performance evaluation conference for all non-tenured staff, and then there is 1 summative performance evaluation conference that happens at the end of the year. So for each non-tenured teacher, you're looking at a minimum of 4 meetings, a sit down and a review in depth of their work. And I have to tell you, I'm talking about this slide on the heels of tenure and tenure charges and how one gets tenure. I can tell you that all the administrators in the school district, we really look at the observation process as opportunities to grow and partner. The administrators in the school district are true educational leaders. They are instructional leaders. And most of the discussion that happens during those times are about what they're doing for students, how we can be doing things better, and also acknowledging the many great things that our teachers are doing in the classroom. For tenured staff, there are 2 formal observations a year. At least 1 of them is unannounced. Pre-conference is optional for tenured teachers. Post-conference is required. So for every observation that happens, the school administrator is then sitting with the teacher. This usually lasts anywhere between 30 and 60 minutes to review the nuts and bolts of the lesson. And they also include 1 summative evaluation conference. So I talked about gaining of tenure, losing of tenure, and the nuts and bolts of the evaluation. Are there any questions about this before I move on? Any of those items?
The tenured summative evaluation, is that at the end of the year, like the non-tenured?
The summative performance evaluation, yes, they both happen at the end of the school year. Usually they begin around May. So they're likely on the books right now. They begin in May. Principals typically wrap them up by the end of May, first week of June.
Thank you.
If someone, if it were ever recommended that somebody lose tenure now, then does that need to be negotiated with the HEA?
Not negotiated. Evaluations don't come under working conditions unless something is a foul, unless there's a suspicion that someone's being arbitrary or capricious with their evaluations. However, when a teacher is moving either toward non-renewal or tenure charges, you can, especially tenure charges, you can rest assured that the union will be involved in communications. Yes. There's an ongoing dialogue that is established with them.
Is there ever time where the body of work of a teacher is not reflective of what you see in the classroom?
Yes. Yeah. And so I have a slide that has a bullet on that, but I'll tell you, when I talk about the 3 formal evaluations that happen, in addition to that, principals are in our classroom almost daily or on a regular basis. So we call those informal walkthroughs, where principals are in the classrooms. There's not a formal write-up and the documentation and the scoring that goes in, but there is an observation that happens. So Yeah, and I would say anywhere between, I don't know, 50 and 100 times a year, those principals are in those classrooms. And that all plays into the evaluation process. While they don't receive a formal score for that, that does inform the summative evaluation and the mid-year evaluations. So here's how the evaluation scores work. There are generally 3 components that provide a summative score. One is the teacher practice. That's the observation. So when we go in our classrooms, there are 3 different areas that we evaluate: planning and preparation, classroom environment, and classroom instruction. At the end, each item is scored and they come up with anywhere from a 1 to a 4 for teacher practice. 4 being highly effective, 2.65 to 3.49 effective, partially effective, and then ineffective. Also factored into that final score at the end of the year is the student growth objective. That is based on standardized test data of the cohort of students that teacher teaches, the level of growth they have from one year to the next. That's the second metric. And then the third, that's the student growth percentile, I'm sorry. And then the student growth objective is the data goal that teachers are required to start at the end of the school year. They administer some type of ongoing assessment, and then there's a summative assessment provided at the end of the year, and a score is derived from that. So the teacher practice, the SGO, and the student's growth percentage are then weighed together for the summative review that happens at the end of the school year. Now, in COVID world, where we don't have NJSLA to measure some of the student growth percentile data, more weight goes to the teacher practice in deriving that summative score. And the same for this year, the New Jersey Department of Education ruled that SGOs, student growth objectives, would not be part of the summative score this year. So it's fully reliant on teacher practice this year.
I don't know if you're gonna touch on this. Have the principals in your evaluations been talking to, the Zoom meetings or the more? I realize we're now.
Yes, several observations were done virtually. Yeah. So obviously all ongoing throughout the year, there are factors that we consider when determining whether or not to renew a teacher. It includes the teacher practice, professionalism the teacher demonstrates, essentially whether or not we believe they're a good fit for community impact. That is the overview of the teacher evaluation process. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Priola. That's the only presentation on the board for tonight, so we'll move to board member comments and committee reports. And I think we'll start, so Jamie, curriculum committee.
Yeah, we met April 14th. We talked about they're no longer doing the NJSLA, which is kind of a late notice, but they're not. So for our spring data collection, we are using mostly Linkit, and the ESSA funding requires that we submit data, and so we'll be able to use our Linkit for that, which is good. They went over during the delayed opening, the teachers were reviewing the data also that came from the Linkit. And they talked about the secondary tech articulation because next year, I think it's next year, probably, they're going to be changing the computer science requirements, the state. So we're reworking the articulation, which will give more depth and breadth to our current computer science program. We're going to have additional 2 stipends for work on the math committee. We're also investing in cross science, which is in line with the ESSA, funding. And cross science is a hands-on experiential science program for K through 8. Also, I like this. It's the we're going to be now having Overdrive. I don't know if you use Overdrive at the library, but the Overdrive is how you can get e-readers and audiobooks. And the school will be tapped into that, so the students are able to easily download all of the stuff that they would normally be able to get from the public library as well as the school library. And being that so much is online, that will be nice to have that connected. They'll be doing some summer curriculum because the NJSLS changes over the summer, so we'll be making sure that the curriculum is up to date. And there was talk about the summer programming. We're at this point that we have some offerings for the high school and possibly middle school, and where we have a lot of staffing constraints for the elementary school. And so we are looking at possibly having alphabets come for the elementary school, but right now, we really might not have the teacher availability to run some of the programming.
I have a question, I don't know if it's to you or Colleen in the chat. With the cross science for the ESSA, which, because it's covered by that grant, is it fully covered, the whole $90,000, or we?
The false science wouldn't fall under, that's not fault, not using grant money for that, are we, Colin?
I think we talked about that it definitely would
Oh, okay.
qualify, and since it's like a one-time thing, it's less expensive other than, but, I think normally would fall under the textbook.
We'll get back
It
to
doesn't
you.
have to be, I'm scrolling to find it on the agenda, I thought it said on the agenda that it was, it's to be charged to the ESSA fund grant.
Yeah, I know that's what we were discussing at the
Okay.
meeting, but I don't know if that's.
Section 3, number, okay.
Okay.
I apologize if I put it under the wrong spot.
No, Mike's gonna,
We'll take a look at that and then do the adjustment. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's the right spot.
And I saw on the attachment, it was for grades, I think it's like 1 through 5. Is that all the elementary, like, all the elementary
It
schools
is.
get it?
It is. Yeah, we've been using it in Haddonfield for a couple of years, but we've only had 1/3 of what we actually need. And the teachers have been juggling it, but since we've been using common planning time, it's become a more obvious problem that they can't, and teachers all wanted to use it for one grade level wanted to use it for project-based learning, but they found that they couldn't do it at the same time if they didn't have the materials, so it kind of brought it to our attention again to even it out.
Thank you, Jamie. We'll move to finance and facilities. Justin?
Sure. So we met on the 13th of April. The first item on the agenda was discussion of the budget. The only update there, I think, Mike, was that you submitted the budget to the county and we're awaiting approval.
Actually, they emailed me on Monday. So
Perfect.
we're on track to adopt next week.
Perfect. Thank you. The second item on the agenda was sub-pay rates. So I understand that there was a minimum wage increase for EAs. And so because of that, make sure we have alignment. The proposal was to increase the rate for full-day subs. So I think we're at 100 now. We wanted to move up to 105 per day. Is that right?
Sure.
Yeah, perfect. We spent a lot of time talking about the maintenance plan. A few things. I understand. We're doing a lot more now with respect to maintenance, and so one of the things Mike and Tim discussed was the fact that we now do, I think it's 3 walkthroughs of the buildings a year. In addition, we have the architect of record do a walkthrough once a year, and we have our school dudes capital forecast tool. Which coming off of the heels of a school dude's, facilities conditions assessment, which was a one-time thing. I think there was a big process and big push to load a lot of things into the software. I understand that this software, you can basically put in whatever you want. So we can put in, lawn mowers and computers, et cetera, and really have the ability to track where we are with respect to, not just, maintenance of things like buildings, but also equipment and stuff like that. So it's good. So it's giving us a lot more visibility into our maintenance needs. Another item on the agenda was we talked about PTA at Tatum was asking for, essentially our blessing to dedicate fundraising efforts to replacing a small playground behind Tatum. Another one was fifth grade committee at Tatum wants to donate a Gaga pit, which I didn't fully know what that was, but it was explained to me that it is like dodgeball with packed sand. Apparently there's one next to Wedgewood. I was told to go take a look at it. I still have to do that. Okay. I know my third grader loves playing it. I've just never seen it. We talked about the hardscape project. I think the timing is that in April, for the high school, in April, we would award the bid. And then for the roof, the cupola, the bid would be in June, and we would award it in July. The potential land acquisition memo, I don't know if everybody's seen that. We got some outside advice, potential, property on Grove Street over by Tatum, just sort of evaluating that. There was monthly borough meeting, which I understand was canceled, so no update from that. And then we talked a little bit about non-represented staff salaries.
I have two things that you come. So it's interesting. I went to several meet and greets for the commissioners held outside the upcoming commissioner candidates. And one of them, I'm not passing judgment at all on this idea, but this person had mentioned that there would be property for sale nearby Tatum. And maybe that would be somewhere where you could put in some retirement community buildings that would be available for downsizing. I'm not saying whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, there's pros and cons, but I think as a Board of Ed, we have to just be aware that if something is for sale next to one of our schools, if we don't buy it, and I'm not saying we necessarily should, but we just have to always be aware that it can be taken like that, which is what happened when the Bancroft referendum was passed. So people are already talking about that property next to Tatum. And again, it might not be a bad idea, just we need to be aware. And then the other thing was, I'm wondering if, it doesn't have to be now over the summer. I love that you said that, we're looking at all of our upcoming capital projects. In years past, part of the problem was that, obviously when the budget can't accommodate everything, you can say one more year on this, one more year on this, because you don't want to impact class size or curriculum or textbooks. And so I'm wondering if maybe yearly, annually, or biannually, we could see a list of, here are the most important projects, because when I tried to manually do this in Excel back in 2014, the problem was we had 600,000 that we needed one year, 800,000 the next year, 900,000 the next, and until you saw all of the projects, you didn't realize how it kept getting compounded by everything pushing back, and I just think it would be good if we could get a regular update on that.
Next week, we're having the maintenance presentation. Mike's going to take you through maintenance, which includes the school do software that does that accounting. And then next month, we're having a presentation on capital projects and future capital projects going up. So we have those the next 2 months. We have next week and the next month we have that information coming out.
You're having.
Yeah, no, we definitely talked a lot about that because, they have a lot of visibility. I mean, they'll have, the number of years in something. So I don't know, say it's a roof and say it's 30-year roof. There are things that they can look at. And I think it still requires a bit, of judgment and people that have the experience like Tim looking at it and say, all right, well, since it's end of life here, I think that's legitimate, or I think we can get another 5 years here. But right, we still want that visibility. And just because we're doing a walkthrough 3 times a year, we're having a land architect once a year, maybe we have a maintenance presentation once a year. I don't know what the plan is going to be.
That's the plan to do that. And Mike, we should probably reach out to the community group who are concerned with building maintenance, invite them to make sure they're aware of this is going on. Because, one of the frustrating parts for you as a board we just spent $35 million bond referendum and added 2 classrooms. Right? And everything else went to fixing things that hadn't been taken care of. We certainly are making a goal not to let that happen again. By having this software, by keeping the maintenance up, by showing everyone what we're doing, right? This is what this is going, this is what we're doing. That won't be the next time we have a bond referendum, it'll be about education, not about keeping the building standing up. But we do need to have that out because people need to understand it is not cheap to keep these buildings going. The windows that are usually held up by the book things, I think we're looking at like how much was it to replace the windows in the district?
Oh, in the district?
Yes.
Oh, millions.
Yeah, millions, several $1 million. I mean, that stuff, and they're not, and if you're in my office, there's literally a tree branch holding the one window open. But these are things that need to be done that haven't been done. And we do need to plan for it. You're exactly right. We need to have an idea of when we can get to those things.
And the more we communicate it, if we ever need to do a future referendum, we've been bringing the public with us all along. It's not a surprise.
Yeah, and it'd be like, oh, we're thoughtful about this. You just didn't spring us one. It's like, oh, we need on the window. We've known this, so we
Yeah.
got this fixed.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was definitely the discussion when bringing the community into it. And your whole point around having more visibility. Because I think, if I know you, you want to know, if we're choosing to spend money on certain things, what aren't we doing?
Yes.
What are we putting off? And that's exactly the type of information that, putting through this school software that I think we're going to be able to get and where the administration's trying to take us. So, I mean, I left that meeting feeling pretty good about where we are from a maintenance perspective. I guess we'll hear more from Mike next week.
Thank you. Can I ask, did you look at the property that is near Tatum, and what are your thoughts?
We're trying to schedule to go look at it in person. So we'll report back when we do.
Okay, I thought you had seen her.
We had been trying, it's been several weeks in the making trying.
Oh, okay.
So one of the options was now,
Oh.
but we choose to.
Or tomorrow at the same time. And,
Yeah, but we've gotten some guidance on, some considerations, go into this. And, obviously we have Susan, fortunately, so she provided us some insight of the types of things that we would need to look into as well. But yeah, we still need to figure out.
I have a question. So I'm the person, and I love looking gift horses in the mouth because if it drops dead, it becomes a bulldog and a lot of health insurance needs. So the fifth grade at Tatum.
That's an inside joke.
You weren't here. You weren't here. You weren't here. Tom was lamenting that his new bulldog costs a lot to keep healthy.
Gotcha.
Okay. So another gift I would keep giving, it sounds like a gift is being offered to us through Tatum in their fifth grade gift. It's a Gaga pit. One of the commitments I love as a board we've made, and legally we must, is to provide access to all the community members. In my brain, a Gaga pit is a walled-in box that you got to climb over. So is this gift going to be accessible to all members of the community? It's something we required of the central PTA when they wanted to give a gift to, and required more fundraising. So is that something we've communicated to them, that our expectation is accessibility in all things?
Yeah, thank you for bringing it up, because that actually came up in the last couple of days. So, like you just said, Central PTA, we approved the donation of their Gaga pit last year, and we had the same requirement, just be sure it's ADA compliant. And for the Finance and Facilities Committee, we didn't really talk about that point. That came up again in the last couple of days, but it's something we're asking them for. Just so you know, what you would be approving next week is just the acknowledgement of the donation. That is not a commitment of the board of anything financially from the board. That is just to allow the donation and recognize the donation of the Gaga pit. But we are requiring that it be ADA compliant, just like Central Schools.
As well as the playground.
Yeah, we talked about that on the playground. Didn't we?
Oh, was that?
Is that,
The playground. we
right,
just-
was that stipulated? Okay.
I mentioned it just because playing Gaga.
Yeah, and it's a great question, yeah.
Okay, Justin, can you give up just a little bit more? They want to build another playground you're going to need them? Which I'm not at all against, but there's two there already. What's the?
I guess I interpret it as
Replace.
So you
replace it.
Replace.
Replace
That
it. Oh,
younger
okay.
age playground.
Yeah.
So thanks for that update, Justin. Policy, Lynn?
Yeah, so we met last Thursday. It was a really light meeting this month. We discussed the two policies that are on the agenda for a vote next week for a second reading. You'll remember it's the mandatory new policy regarding family leave, which incorporates the FMLA and NJFLA requirements, aligns with our current practices, so it won't necessitate any changes. And then the revision of our volunteer policy, because of the necessity of substantial community volunteer help to oversee lunches in phase 3 and our lack of time to complete checks. This one, we changed the threshold for TB testing and a criminal history check from 10 hours a month to 20 hours a month. So those are both up for a vote next week. And then we reviewed 10 existing policies and pulled just one for amendment. And that was policy 8500 regarding food services, and it just outlines our food service program, but it mentions that only high school students living within 5 blocks of the school can go home for lunch with pre-approval. Obviously, many more people than that go home, so we need to take another look at the policy. So that will be on the agenda. And that's it.
Any questions for me? Okay. Seeing none, I'll move on to communications. Linda?
Yeah, we met on March 30th, and in that meeting, we actually had 2 outside companies demo a tool for us. So we had identified that we like some kind of a tool that will help broaden the communications. And these 2 companies, one was a brand new to us, and the other is offers additional services, but it's the company that we already use, EduLink in Touch. And we currently have a demo that we're looking at, so we just got access to that last week. We're evaluating that. We're going to talk about it in our next meeting, and then hopefully the meeting after that, we can come back to you with some more information.
Thank you. And Tom, give us a negotiations update.
Yes, so on the agenda for next week for votes, under 4G, we have the final MOA with the Haddonfield Administrators and Supervisors Association. I want to thank Jerry, Shannon, and Dan for working with us on that and bringing it to a conclusion. H is our approval of the sidebar agreement between the board and the HEA regarding 12-month work for the child study team members that we discussed, the terms of which were discussed in executive session. So that'll be set for vote next week as well. And just a quick public update on our negotiations with the HEA. We're continuing to make progress, and thanks as always to Rachel and Sean for continuing to work with us towards the conclusion of a new contract for the HEA.
Great. Anyone have any PTA updates or updates from other committees that they sit on as liaison? We had one meeting of the Haddonfield Educational Trust. This meeting's a bit of a mess. The one item of discussion that they lost the quorum to be able to vote on was they continue to raise funds for other beautification projects. And they met, the leadership of the HET met with Mr. Klaus. I think they took a tour of the auditorium, or at least
That's next Tuesday we are.
So you're taking a tour next Tuesday in the auditorium. There has been suggestions on different types of naming rights that they could offer for fundraising opportunities down to the individual seat to larger areas. There was a discussion and an ask of when that time came to understand the threshold that needed board approval for naming, because we do have a policy about naming things. Not like a brick in the sidewalk, which would be akin to a chair, but if they wanted to name the stage, or if they wanted to name the balcony, or something like that, they wanted understanding of what the hurdles were for the different opportunities. And then there was a discussion that did not come to fruition because of the lack of quorum, of if they needed to create a new bank account for fundraising, if they had a specific project for the auditorium, or if that could fall under general beautification. And there's a little disagreement about how they would want to handle that. So it was just interesting. Next meeting is next month. I will be attending the Haddonfield Municipal Alliance on Monday, so I'll give an update at the next board meeting, the HMA.
Is the ATT doing golf and the roast or?
Yeah, no, they are doing golf.
Okay.
June 21st. June 21st.
Yeah, June 21st.
Okay.
And Lynn and I are the liaisons for the HET. Yeah, so June 21st is, and they will never say no to volunteers. Any members of the public that are watching this live or Memorex, if you want to reach out to the HET, you can totally help.
Or sign up to golf if you don't want to volunteer.
Of course, sign up to golf, or sign up to sponsor one of the many things like holes closest to the hole. The HET does a ball drop where you buy a golf ball and somebody comes. One year they tried to do a helicopter at Tavistock and it didn't go so hot. So they really just chucked it onto the putting green from the balcony, and if your ball's closest to the hole, or if it goes in, you're the winner, and you win a 50-50. So it's an exciting fundraising opportunity, and it's actually fun to watch someone try to lift a bucket of golf balls. It gets kind of heavy if we have the fundraising activities of prior years.
Are we gonna see you two out there golfing? You and I?
Not me.
I only golfed the first time I ran. Other than that, no, I'm not golfing. It was a mess.
Dave, the question how many people got the reference to them.
Yeah. It was a thing. Company that made cassettes. So, Dr. Priello, any assistant superintendent report you'd like to make other than the fine presentation you made earlier?
That was too kind. I don't have a formal presentation. I do have a couple brief announcements. One, I want to give the board an update on the Tatum principal search. We had a very robust applicant pool. We had 65 applicants for the Tatum principal position. We narrowed that down to 25 applicants who participated in screening interviews that I conducted over the last week. From the pool of 25, we narrowed it down to 8 participants who engaged in a panel interview that happened on, today is Thursday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this past week. The panel included teachers, paraprofessionals, administrators, and parents. The field of 8, we have now narrowed down to 4. And those second round panel interviews will take place on Monday and Tuesday of next week, followed by a final interview with Mr. Klaus and I that will happen on May 4th or 5th. So we anticipate bringing forward a candidate for recommendation at the May Board of Education meeting.
Will that give enough time for them to start with sufficient runway to be up and going by the beginning of school?
That's a great question. So with approval at the May 28th Board of Education meeting, that provides then a 60-day notice window to have the candidate begin on August 1st. But it's important to know that August 1st would be the latest date, and that coincides with Ms. Klein's official retirement date. So we are on pace and on schedule, and we think we're going to be bringing forward an excellent candidate for the Tatum School Committee. Second thing I want to announce that Dr. Kristen Loren and I will be presenting at the National Ruler Conference next week. We were one of a handful of school districts across the country that were asked to present at their national conference. We're excited about that. And the Parent Playground Volunteer Program, I can't thank the PTAs enough. We know we needed PTA, but we know we needed parent volunteers to make phase 3 lunches work. And after 2 coordination meetings that I was able to run with the PTA leadership, it couldn't have been more supportive. I'm so thankful for the work that they are doing, the support that they were able to establish, and nearly all of the volunteer spots, particularly for the month of April, were filled within the first 72 hours of the notice going out. Mr. Klaus and I have been out to the schools viewing that in action, and the parents are doing a wonderful job. So we are very thankful for the PTAs and for the parents who are volunteering their time and effort.
Thank you. Mr. Klaus, superintendent's report.
All right, just take you through some quick things. Something you should all be aware of is first grade numbers. Central is maxed out. They are at 75. We're at 25 per class. 5 students have already been directed to other schools. So it's been maxed out. I just saw an email where we're sitting here of another family who's moved into Central School. I believe as a first grader. Ms. Semke's doing a great job at explaining the process and then sending it to the school and having them register there. There will be a waiting list to come back if spots open up. But for now, if they don't open up, they stay maxed until 3rd grade, they can maybe come back. We see that those numbers are tight. Quarantining, we put out a notice yesterday. This is actually a screenshot from the CDC. And the point that is important here is that local public health authorities determine established quarantine options for the jurisdictions. The Haddonfield, as you saw yesterday, we put out a notice, Gino got a notice out about our quarantining decision. People don't like it, and I know that because I've had literally, I shouldn't say literally because I know that there's a literal figure, but it might be literally 3 administrators do nothing but answer questions about quarantine this week. The stakes are higher. I'll talk about this in a little bit, but this is how this happens, right? We are under the purview of the Camden County Department of Health. The CDC establishes and the states establish and each county establishes because counties are different, right? Our county is different than Salem County, population-wise, all of those things. So we follow the Camden County Department of Health's quarantining decisions. And this is taken directly from the communication yesterday. They urge Haddonfield School District and all school districts. Matter of fact, there is not one school district in Camden County who's not observing the 14 days for close contact. When we were walking through a month before, 3 weeks before, the CDC went to 3 feet, and we were walking through the county. We were saying, here's what we're doing. We're going to bring back both cohorts. We're going to keep 3 feet, most of it before. They said, not our recommendation, but we understand. They were okay. They listened. When we talk about going to 10-day quarantine, they're like, do not do it. They are adamant about it. As a matter of fact, today, our contact said, I don't want to hear this question again. It's over. It's 14 days until we go into yellow. We're staying with 14 days. It's a challenge, and it's difficult. So, if you think about it, in November, if you were quarantined for 14 days, depending on the day you're quarantined, you might miss 3 half days of school. And that'll be it. Now you're missing 10 full days of school. But the stakes are much, much higher. So many people who were accepting, okay, it's quarantining 6 months ago are saying, no, my kid needs to be in school. Listen, I understand. If we could do the 10-day, we would do the 10-day, but that is not the advice we're giving. We follow the Department of Health, and they are really strongly adamantly saying, this is what you need to do. In addition to not just the full days of school, we have other things happening now. We're running dances, right? They're they're unique, right? The sports are there. The drama club they're putting on the presentation in 2 weeks. We are doing things other school districts are not doing. We have neighboring school districts who have already canceled proms. We're doing freshman and sophomore dances, which are very important. Our philosophy all along has been, you got to give them kids everything you can possibly give them, right? That raises the stakes because now I miss my freshman dance. So we understand the frustration of the parents, but we are staying at 14 days. because that's what the Department of Health, the Camden County Department of Health specifically recommends for us. And I'm not gonna get into the emails, but we've had some emails that were less than pleasant, adversarial, I would say, confrontational, but we're sticking with this. This is what we're doing, just so we're aware of it. And the reasons why, we aren't just picking a rule we like, we are following direct direction tells you. We are following directions given to us by the Camden County Department of Health. And these are just, we're in orange, and you see here, at this part down here, that says, the close contact, let me hide this. Close contacts 14 days. If you hit that link, this shows you that, and that's a significant economic hardship or other. Significant, right? So if I'm going to miss a lacrosse game, that's not a significant hardship. If I'm going to miss a baseball tryout or whatever, not a significant hardship. This is really a high standard. So that's why we're sticking with our 14 days. Phase 3, as we're all aware, I hope, phase 3 started on Monday. I didn't ask everyone. I'm pretty sure we're the first public K-12 school in Camden County that's fully open. And maybe even if you spread a couple counties out, I think that's the case there. The opening went very well. Gino talked about it. It was exciting to see, right? Kids were excited. It was the first day of school. So this is our third first day of school this year, right? We had our first day of school in September. We came back after being off for so long. We had our first day of school. We were with all of our friends and all of our classmates. And now we have our first day of school. And it was exciting, and people were happy to be here. And we spent a lot of times, I spent a lot of time walking through the buildings, and it really did have a good, strong energy vibe to it. It was exciting. It was great to see. And it came from a lot of hard work. We have to adjust some areas. The lunch distribution is still a little bumpy. We're going to get on that. The high school, we might tweak the bell schedule a little bit because of timing. So there's some things that still have to be ironed out. We're going to be flexible, but as a whole, it went off excellent. The parent volunteers, Gino just said it. We absolutely would not be able to do this without the parent volunteers. If we didn't have those parents, we would not be doing this right now. Okay, that's can't say it more clearly. The principals, the staff, the teachers, it's great. It is great. The work being put in, the flexibility. You know, I walk around, and I came to the high school, and the high school lunch was an interesting thing. I'm walking around, I see a lot of staff members in the hallway. I was thinking, like, boy, there's a lot of people here at lunch, and they're just out spending time with the kids at lunch, making sure everything's okay, giving them their time. Really, really wonderful job by them. The principals have been outrageously great, as they have all year long. You're going to see in your board update tomorrow, I think the most building board update is going to be like one sentence, like, I survived the week. You know, our elementary school principals, we have 5 lunches that are 50 minutes each. They're out there for 5 hours straight, supervising kids, making sure things are going well. You know, then they're doing their job. Then they're doing their principal job, starting at 3:30 until whenever we're going to get done at the end of the night. Really a lot of effort by the administration, but the staff, the administration, can't say enough. Can't say enough.
I also want to add, in visiting the schools, seeing the level of commitment from our support staff, while it's always been exceptional, they have all gone above and beyond in taking an active planning role in helping to ensure that this has all been run smoothly. There were counselors out, there were language arts specialists out there helping out, handing out trays, opening milk boxes. It was a really all hands on deck effort. So when I talk about the kudos to the parents, certainly we couldn't have done this with the principals, but our support staff really has been tremendous also. So it's, you know, I know some of our principals lost sleep Tuesday night because Wednesday they were calling for rain in the forecast. So we haven't had to entirely transition things inside. I know we had a couple classes that had to move in a little bit on Wednesday afternoon, but the effort across the board has been tremendous. And really very proud to see the work that our folks are doing.
And ultimately, we had a lot of happy kids this week. We had a lot of tired kids this week. At the end of the day, Monday, I think some of them had to be like dragged down the street. They were so tired from the full day of school. They were not ready for it. They're not in shape for it. They'll get used to it. But a lot of really happy kids, a lot of really tired kids. we're very proud of the fact that the school district could do this with the help of all our staff. COVID numbers quickly. You see they're high. 8 in the high school. We moved the freshman dance because of these numbers. So it was alluded to in yesterday's newsletter, but there was an event a week ago Saturday, a large gathering of students. Of those 8, and some of the middle school, most of those are related to that single event. That would be a patient zero type of event, right? So positive at this event. Then went to practices and got more people positive there, some close contacts there. So it's spread out from there. We're hoping that this enough people know about this. This is a lesson for the future for others. But we were concerned that if we have the freshman dance tomorrow night and it's not cleared from the building, we could be then those people. My grammar showing. We could then be the ones hosting a super spreader event, and that's not what we wanted to do. So we felt on the side of caution, we're moving it to Saturday, June 8th, I think is the day we picked. A rare Saturday night dance. So that had to be. And like I said, we have family clusters about like all these with always some of these you see at the lower level of family clusters connected to some of the high school cases. Once again, you can see there it is with the COVID, all students this time by grade, by building. You can see the high school is high there. And our COVID scores are not where we want them to be, but they have dropped this week. They're down to 27.3 for the case rate. 25 is our goal number. But the percent positivity's dropped, so we are on the right track with these COVID rates. And the percent change, anything below 0 means we're doing well. It means it's changed, it's not changing as well. So we are still trending where we want to trend. And the county numbers by case, they're a little higher than we'd like. They're within a range we feel comfortable. And then finally, upcoming presentations. We're at capital improvement next month. Capital improvement next month. We're going to see a state of our special education department. We're going to rethink middle school conferences. Ms. Matozo is going to present there. That was actually supposed to be this month, and I screwed up. I forgot to ask Connie to put that on the curriculum committee agenda. So I wanted to make sure the curriculum committee saw that first. So I messed that one up. So Ms. Matozo, supposed to be this month. We're pushing that back, and we see the other ones coming up throughout the summer. Any questions?
I love your firmness on the whole vaccine. I love that you're always looking to protect the students. Just general, not vaccines, I'm so sorry.
Quarantine.
Thank you, quarantine. Have you guys discussed with whether it's the county or our doctors, when students are vaccinated, will that impact the amount of time they have to quarantine?
Fully vaccinated, do not quarantine.
Don't quarantine.
So if you're fully vaccinated or you've been positive the last 3 months, then there's no quarantining. And fully vaccinated is 2 full weeks after the second shot.
Yep.
Right, so if you get your second shot, you're literally, tell the county, you're 13 days after your second shot, you're still quarantined, 14 days. So you're fully vaccinated, you do a quarantine, there's no quarantine, or positive in the last 3 months.
So what happens in that situation, a parent may receive a close contact notice for their child. It will inform us that he or she is fully vaccinated. They provide us the vaccination card. We vet that through our doctor and the nurse, and we get back to them and the exemption. And we've had a few of them, and we anticipate seeing more. And we do want to emphasize again that New Jersey opened up vaccinations for 16-year-olds, 16 and up, beginning on Monday. I can tell you Monday evening, I went on and signed up for an appointment for my 16-year-old son, and appointments were available for the next day. So we're really encouraging folks to access those centers. Rowan does them, Morristown Mall, Camden County College.
Adams Pharmacy right over in Haddonfield, Berlin Road has slots open. They're 5 years, so they have them for 16-year-olds. So
CVS in Pennsauken as well.
I'll say if anyone is having difficulty navigating where to get a shot, please reach out to us. We'll help you get on the right track.
And so the follow-up to that is, if somebody's not told that they're in close contact, but they've gotten 2 vaccinations as a student, are we, as a district, tracking that with our nurses? And if not, will we do it next year with the health history, vaccination history that we provide? Or?
We have not discussed next year
We
yet.
are not, we're not tracking, we're currently not tracking.
We're not tracking, but if there's a need for us to know, for example, in a situation where there may be close contact, that's when we're accessing them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
If,
you.
if you folks don't mind, I'm going to reserve the board president report to after public comment. So we'll open up the floor to public comment at this time. So please shift this over and put up the slide. Unlike Adam, who likes to join twice and stare in, I'm just gonna go over and open up because the public won't see this anyway, because all they see is the slide. So we can see if any calls do come in. So we can all see it, and it's not a surprise to us. So the slide is now up. And while we're waiting for anybody to dial in, Ms. Gould, co-president of the HEA, is here. As always, they have a representative at our board meetings, but if you'd like to make a comment, now would be the time. No, I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm making an offer.
No, I'm good, thank you.
All right. Thank you. So I hate silence. So instead of humming, I'm going to again reiterate, if the public is watching, and right now we only have 14 people watching, please call the number on the screen, turn down your computer, dial the PIN, and when I acknowledge that your digits have shown up, you do *6 on your phone to unmute yourself. And see, now we're all staring at the screen in rapt anticipation for a call-in on a rather cool, oh, here we go. So see, our wish was granted. I'm going to recognize 856 ending in 97. You are already unmuted, and now you are gone. So I believe that *6 turned into a *end. So we'll give you an opportunity to call back in. And anyone else that would like to do that? At this time, I'm going to ask Mike, do we have any written submissions of forms, or?
No,
There were none. There are no members of the Fourth Estate here. So as a Memorex reference, I'm talking about reporters. So there are no reporters in attendance either who wouldn't ask a question, so that's odd, but all right, we're gonna give it until 8:04 on our clock. So that's 2 minutes of open time. So if you'd like to call in, especially 856 ending in 17, your chance is still open. See, I gave you something else to stare at. The 3 turning to a 4. And now there are 18 people watching. So some people have joined in maybe just for the opportunity to call in. So that would be wonderful. All right, it is now 8:04. Recognizing that there is no public comment, we're going to close public comment. Or we could drop the slide. I will hide the participant list and go back to it. So board president report. There's thank yous that need to be had and I will make them on behalf of a community that chose not to. And I love the recognition that our teachers got, and our support staff got, and our building people got. I would personally like to thank the administration, who has had less than ideal thank yous for the tremendous amount of effort to get us all back into phase 3. So on behalf of a very quiet, but I'm sure still grateful community, thank you guys for your effort. The second thank you I want to give out is to our teachers, especially in the high school, for doing as much as they absolutely could for our students so they didn't fall behind. We've seen it in 2 areas, Linkit data, and now the aggregate SAT scores have just been announced. And again, in the 7 southern counties and every school district south of Trenton, Haddonfield is again the #1 school district in aggregated SAT scores. Our slippage was 6 points. Most of that happened in math, completely understandable, because these are such hard concepts to grasp. It's funny, on the Lincoln side, one of the caveats of some of the early grade feedback was, yeah, there's some help. You can't help in an SAT. And that's proof positive that yet again, our structure, our classes, and the execution of our teachers to impart wisdom on our students has shown brightly again in those scores. So just a big thank you on behalf of the board to all of those, all the way back from the beginning of their learning journeys to those scores. Absolutely impressive yet again. Thank you. That's So now we'll move into a review of next week's agenda. And then the first section is governance. So the items that we're going to be discussing will be, and I'm going to stop for 1 second to just make sure that if it doesn't show up, is it in the agenda? Okay, all right, so then we'll hit it when we get there. All right, so the first section would be governance. We'll be accepting our monthly suspension, hit, vandalism, and violence reports. We will approve our fire and safety drill reports. We will pass a resolution to abolish policies, and that's really funny. Okay, well, I'll just ask the question after I get through this. And then policy approval on second reading of 2 policies, family leave and school volunteers. And then we want to accept an acknowledgement of secure storage of firearms proclamation. The reason I just stumbled on that before I opened up the floor was I believe you should reverse C and D, because if we don't approve I know we do it in bulk, but humor me, if we don't approve it, we can't abolish the existing policies. So my one recommendation would be to flip C and D.
2415 was already passed.
Oh, those were already, so these are ones that are going to be removed. So actually, yes, that makes more sense then. So thank you. Discussion around these governance items?
I just wanted to personally thank Lynn. It was, I believe, your idea to bring up the secure storage of firearms, and I think it's fantastic. So thank you for getting that on the agenda and making this happen.
For being supportive.
It hasn't passed yet.
Supportive of it being even on the agenda.
All right, moving on, curriculum and special education, we will be approving.
No. Oh, it's next week, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So curriculum and special education, approval of field trips, conferences, travel, and hell no overnight field trips. Not right now. Right. Resolution for a student to receive some homebound instruction. A resolution between Gold Book and the Haddonfield Board of Education to provide web-based access to instructional interventions, and a resolution for a student to attend a transitional program at the Real Center, and a resolution between Learning Ally and the Haddonfield Board of Education for a license renewal for services they provide. Any discussions in that area? I will ask the question. What is web-based instructional interventions, and how is Goldbook providing them? Are they an existing vendor, or is this a new
They're
partnership?
a new vendor, so Goldbook, with IRS and some 504 and Class 5 students, with targeted intervention, you write, it's a need-based piece that offers goal setting and intervention strategies. So it's a way to track intervention services on targeted basis for certain students. So we've got enough, this is enough that all of our K-12 special ed teachers will be trained and certain interventions will be trained. So as they're working with individuals, it enables them to set goals, targeted standards, and then work with specific interventions to that end.
And how is that being provided now?
It's being provided now, so if you are participating in an INRS meeting, an intervention meeting, and you're looking to develop interventions and strategies for that student, you're compiling assessment data and then making an informed decision to develop a goal, and then you are making an informed decision at the table to pair it with an intervention. What this software does is, based on the identification of need, recommends goals, and then pairs it with very specific evidence-based strategies. So it streamlines the process, and it also capitalizes on a data bank of evidence-based strategies and goal development. So it helps automate the process a little bit. I don't want to give the impression that it's okay, you have this problem, you hit a button, and it's going to spit out your recommendation.
No, actually, you cleared my concern up, which is this is a tool for the interventionists, not a replacement of them.
That is correct.
So that was my concern. I just didn't vocalize it that way. I did it poorly the first attempt. Any others in that area? All right, moving on to personnel. We will be approving transfers, salary upgrades, mentoring, extracurricular coaching appointments, leaves of absences, and resignations. We will accept the reemployment of non-represented and represented certified staff and non-certified staff for the upcoming school year, as well as athletic and non-athletic stipend list for the upcoming year. The approval of Donald Gorecki to proctor AP exams. An approval for the summer ESY employment from July 5th to August 5th of this year at Elizabeth Haddon Elementary. A resolution to approve the reduction of hours of Miss Wallace. I can't say anything other than Miss. She's such an awesome lady and a kindergarten teacher, so they always earn that. And so it sounds like she's teaching just one half class now. They will be the luckiest students alive, which is awesome. Approval of Luis Bayona to provide asynchronous video Spanish lessons. And that is at a curriculum rate, I guess, recording, paid to record these lessons. Approval of the following employee, I don't have to read them out loud, a list of employees to provide additional hours of counseling services, and they are our high school counselors. A resolution to approve additional math committee stipends. Approval of, and this is, so I won't even read them because I'm sure somebody's going to mention they're in the wrong spot. So I'll leave the first one. I and J sound like they should be under curriculum and not personnel. They were just added to the agenda anyway, so we'll find the right home for those. So without getting technical and opening up curriculum, if anybody has a comment about either of those stipends or the FOSS, I will just ask, that's what was mentioned, Jamie, in your report, that we're looking to provide those stipends and adding FOSS.
Yeah, except for we have to see where that funding is coming from for FOSS.
Oh.
We seem to not be sure if it's ESS, I still can't say it.
So is it in the wrong
Pretty
spot?
acronyms in education.
On the agenda, yes.
Oh.
But the FOSS one is, the stipend, it's compensation. You can argue it's personnel or curriculum because it's for curriculum, either one. There's no really agenda rule on that, but.
Sure. Well, whatever's right. Any other questions on this? I only have one. So the proctor of AP exams, that's not specific to course. That's just a proctor for AP exams in general?
Correct. So, because the exams are long and there's many of them during the school day, we can't always cover them. So we've always had someone come out and do the outside. In addition, some of the people who would normally be proctoring have children in school who are taking the AP exam. So if you have a child taking an AP exam, you cannot proctor any AP exams. We have an administrator who would normally proctor one every day. They have a child in the building taking an AP exam, so they can't proctor at all. So sometimes we get into a problem with that. We get jammed up when 2 or 3 of our normal proctors are doing it. So the counseling department does the bulk of it. But there are times when, now that we're offering, I think, 24 groups in 2 weeks where we have overlays and we just can't staff it. So Mr. Gorecki comes in. He used to be the head of guidance, but he comes in and helps us out.
Great. Thank you. Any other? All right. Well, moving on to business and finance recommendations, approving of a contract for the DJ for the dances. Hopefully they're still available for the new date. Accept the donation of money with the intention of building a Gaga pit at Tatum from the Tatum 5th grade committee. Approving PMC Associates to install a district-wide radio communication system. Approval of Amendment 1 for IDEA grant application to apply carryover funds. And approval of Amendment 2 for IDEA grant application to reallocate budget amounts. And a recommendation to adopt the 21-22 budget that we have been talking about and Mr. Catalano mentioned has been returned by the county to us without comment. Super, congratulations. And approve a memorandum of an agreement for a successor collective negotiation agreement with the Haddonfield Administrators and Supervisors Association. And approve a sidebar agreement between the Haddonfield Board of Education and the Haddonfield Educational Association regarding 12-month work years for the child study team members. And then things that will probably be filled in by the next time because they're still out and being judged. Award a bid for hardscape improvements. Approve of instructional and related service requests for proposals. And an approval of health benefit broker for our, they will all be filled out.
Yeah, that's just RP, nothing, not.
Oh, I was gonna read a date. Thank you. I was stumbling on that. I was like, that doesn't, it looked like a date until it wasn't. We'll approve the payment of our bill list, approving of any budget transfers that are recommended, approval of the board secretary's report, the cash summary report. Any questions on any of those items?
I'd love if someone could just provide a little bit more detail behind the radio communication system. Is that what Sandy got the grant for, or is that, I know what it is. but-
It's covered by, part of this is covered by the grant. So Sandy's grant is being spread out over a number of projects, and this is covering 75% of it. It's the grant covers 75% of this.
It has the 2 accounts there. I was going to clarify that as well, right?
Yes.
So the 66 is coming from an account that is the grants, and then the 22 is the only one that we are really getting in on.
Correct.
Yeah.
And just a little bit more information because I can't retain everything, but maybe more.
So
are they
it's
talking
a
walkie-talkie to each other?
walkie-talkie system, but it's closed, it's ours. So we'll have repeaters on certain buildings, and so we'll be able to communicate not just administrators, anyone who needs to be able to communicate with administrators, people on lunch duty. we'll have walkie-talkies that we are sure we can communicate across the entire community, in case there's an emergency, in case we need to get in touch with someone. Like right now, when you buy walkie-talkies, even decent ones, but we bought some decent ones at the high school, you're picking up Wegmans, spill on aisle 3 type of stuff. And you certainly can't get across to necessarily the superintendent's office. So these walkie-talkies will be a system, and then we can actually have the police can have part of it too, where we can communicate with each other. Cell phones work, but if you're in the bottom of central school, they don't.
Plus, you might just think it's somebody else calling, you might not, if it's an emergency.
Right, you can talk to somebody, yes.
And you can
Yeah.
jam a cell phone too, I would guess.
What's that?
You can jam a cell phone where I'm guessing.
Yeah, so like a good example would have been last year, we had the gas leak at Tatum, right? So that communication took longer than it should have, because now Val's got to call someone, but she could just get on and hit the administrative all call and say that, and then we all know right away it's happening, we can start moving money. But it's also, right, I could just need to ask Mike a question, and just say, hey, Mike, can you help me out with this? Better way to.
So it's gonna connect all the buildings, and, will the teachers also have it on?
No, so we may have certain extras in a building, so, at an elementary school where people go out for lunch duty, maybe they'll have 2 or 3 lunch duty, so they'll bring them and put them back and forth, but not every teacher in the building.
And this is not surprising. I'm sure many schools are going this route.
Yeah,
Many walkie-talkies of any ilk of less than 5 years or older than 5 years work in an unallocated FCC band that was sold to Homeland Security. So this is a common thing that's happening all across our region right now, of people having to upgrade their wireless communication devices, whether they be wireless microphones, walkie-talkies, those types of things, because starting August 1st, 2021, they'll start picking up airport traffic information that is broadcasting very strong. So, good luck. Seeing no other discussions, we'll just move to the final. We will be approving the minutes of March 18th, executive and regular session, and the regular meeting of March 25th. I'm sure there's no comments on that. So any items of future consideration by the board?
The numbers at Central, we're at 75, so I guess we have 3 different classes for first grade. Is that an aberration, or is that something we need to watch, to expect that in subsequent years? Is there something going on that?
a lot of people moving in, like just new families in the community.
At some point, I know in the past, we've talked about full-day kindergarten. Is that something that we should revisit on a periodic basis? Or do we have firm reasons now why we think it's not something we should be looking at?
I think we should revisit it. I think it would be a wonderful thing. I think it's something we should have. If we're looking at even a few years from now, having more space available, maybe as we get the Hopkins parcel, we should be ready with that plan when that happens, as opposed to having to wait. We actually toyed with the idea of this year's kindergarten got more than anyone's ever had in Haddonfield. We toyed with the idea of trying to keep that schedule, but just building wise, we couldn't make it fit. And size wise, we couldn't make that fit. So we definitely want to revisit full day kindergarten.
Piggyback on what Justin said, and I always love that paper. I wouldn't mind getting a paper again that lists out, not one time, but lists out how many classes are in each grade, each school. But if anyone's been following, there's been a lot of parent chatter about the number of students that Snowden and Bancroft may bring in. I had a conversation, with Susan about it, and she had even said so that, her estimates were, I don't know if it's the right word, but, for credibility, she wanted to estimate incoming students on the conservative side and not be, potentially outrageous, and maybe a range would have been better. But my point is that her range was still between like 50 or 80 potential incoming students between Bancroft and Snowden. And now we have the influx of, as you just mentioned with kindergarten. I'm just wondering if I'm thinking it might not be a bad idea to have Susan revisit those numbers and just maybe refresh us all with what was forecasted previously. I just thought that that would be helpful because I think population could be a really big concern, just 3 years down the road.
I agree, it's something we need to watch closely.
But I'd love to have I don't know, I don't want to say a plan, you're not going to do it if it doesn't happen, but we've got to figure out, whether or not there would be options with different arrangements at the schools, whether there'd be different
Right,
boundaries.
so you have, you would, if the population of students did move into the Bancroft area, you would have to redistrict, right? You would have to redistrict, or you have to say, this section goes to the Haddon, whatever, I mean, you're not going to close the school, you saw the neighborhood schools on the other side of town now. But you would have to redistrict, right? Because Snowden goes central, right? So as those places happen, you have to start saying, if we see populations of students, we would have to consider redistricting.
So you would probably put the ones at Bancroft at
At Tatum, right.
closer, and put the ones that are somewhat closer to
Correct,
Elizabeth
yes,
County,
we
but
do.
go to Tatum, would then
Although,
move to.
what's happened in, what Collinswood has done and what Haddon Township has done recently is they have not done that. They have assigned new families. They've assigned new families around the district. Right, so if you had a population moving here, rather than take people who are all equally close to Tatum and sending them across Haddon Avenue, they said, no, we'll just assign this group over to Haddon Avenue because of the neighborhood. So there's different ways of doing it. That would be a long discussion we'd have to have about what that should look like and how the best way to do it is. Because we are fortunate now, I guess we do have some kids across Kings Highway for Lizzie Haddon. But, if you really want to be a walking district, you don't want kids walking across the dangerous streets, right? So that's part of the bigger conversation, I guess. But I think there's no way we can avoid looking at redistricting in the next couple of years. And our buildings are very full, and that's why we can't do a full day kindergarten, because we could, that would be a wonderful thing. And we would have right now, the challenge we're having with Central School first grade, where they're full. If we went full day kindergarten, we would have that in kindergarten, because all the people who send their kids somewhere else for kindergarten wouldn't be sending their kids somewhere else for kindergarten anymore.
Yeah.
Right? We would certainly blow up our kindergarten. So right now, Lizzie has 2 kindergarten classes, so we probably could do the 4-hour day. If we went full day, they'd have three sections, and now all of a sudden we couldn't do that anymore. So there's a lot of those factors we have to take into us. Estimating those numbers are huge in planning that.
Yeah.
It's got to be a long-term plan. It can't be figure this out by September.
Oh, agreed, but I guess my point is that, if we talk about it, I'm making this up, in a month, and then we talk about it again 5 months down the road, and we'll talk about it again 5 months down the road, it gives the public time to hear it, and then we have time to plan and get feedback and get buy-in and socialize it, rather than us, we can work on something for 4, 5, 8 months, and if it, if it's done in subcommittee and, we have a board meeting or 2 about it, we just have to bring the public along, and I know we haven't, I just would like to keep that,
Have it as some kind of regular discussion.
there you go.
I don't know the best way to do it.
I do think, though, that given that there's still so much up in the air about all of this, that for us to spend, given how much everyone's stretched at the moment, for us to have conversations, because we're not giving the public even a fair idea of what's going on, because none of us, I don't even think the commissioners at this point.
And I don't even want to debate things, my point would just be reminding people of, this is the forecast we have. Hey, I did this conservative, so if my conservative is 50 to 80, and it could be 80 to 120, and full day kindergarten would necessitate these classes, and, whatever else, I forget what the third thing was that we just discussed, but the point is just, FYI, everyone, we know we have a problem, we're gonna think about it down the road, but obviously you're juggling a lot of balls, so it may not be something, in the next 2 months, maybe it'll be something we address over the summer, but I just don't wanna push it off till it's a problem. I wanna handle it proactively.
One thing I didn't mention, and it's not necessarily, it is for future consideration, but it's for very soon. It was part of Justin's update, and partly Justin's update, partly your update, where it mentioned one of the upcoming presentations will be a capital presentation. Well, there's capital need and then the funds to actually execute the capital. So if there's any possibility for, in that presentation, to remind us what our outstanding debt retirement schedule is, I would certainly appreciate it. Unlike your home where you're happy when you don't have, anything that you're paying down on a HELOC or home equity line, and anything that comes up, you can dip into your savings. That's not how public financing works. You really try to line up your financing to match what you bought the last time because you're gonna buy it again. So if 20 years ago, we replaced in aggregate 20 years worth of stuff, roofs, windows, flooring, I think it's not like we cross our fingers and say, by the next time that spend is up, I'm selling the house. No, that's not how it works. So if we could also be reminded what we bought with that retired debt, so we can jive it with what our current capital needs are, and then also remind us what our current payments are, what that might translate into borrow. Because if we borrow money, it's two things. It's borrowing money on behalf of the community, and then the other part is, do we have to increase taxes to pay for that? If the answer is no on the second part, because we've already allocated and budgeted for the existing payments, I would love to know the amount it would buy us with our existing payment structure for our existing debt that is retired. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? Other folks?
I got lost.
The point is, if you're paying it's like leasing a car. If you're paying $500 a month and you turn in your lease, you still need a car. And your next one, you say, well, I already know that I can afford $500. It's the same type of deal. We're already paying on debt. That debt bought something that aged because it's capital. We'll have to buy it again, just like you have to get another car at the end of the lease. That's how public financing works. You've already budgeted to spend. I would just like to know what we could buy for the spend. So in the lease example, a $500 car 3 years ago got you an MDX. And $500 this year, you really wanted a Tesla, but no, it's not going to buy a Tesla. It might not even buy an MDX. That might be too expensive. That $500 might just get you a Corolla, right? So understanding what we could get with the payment on the street right now in terms of dollars.
I can just add to that a little bit. So it's funny how you're filling my fundraiser there, because I actually plan on talking about that at our next finance and facilities meeting, taking a look at our outstanding debt, and the entire everything, amortization schedule of all of our payments, when we have debt retiring, falling off, because that's important to know. We should regularly visit that. Also, my presentation next week and the next month will help you paint that maybe tangible picture of, okay, what can that financing give us? So
I didn't mean to, and we didn't talk about it beforehand.
That's why I'm here. So, yeah.
But this is on the minds of the community. What if we have to build something for an influx of people? What if, we've already been very open as a board to say that $35 million was a safe and dry budget, bond, not a improving educational adequacy, which is something that Susan talks about all the time. And now we'll have space needs, we have land acquisition opportunities, and we have our outstanding educational adequacy things to deal with. Well, at least we'd like to know if we can afford any of those without raising taxes. All right.
Last thing for me, I thought the guidance counselor presentation was great. Like, I love that we kind of stepped outside and looked at something that we don't look at that frequently, at least since in the short amount of time that I've been here. And it's just a question. It makes me wonder if there are any other areas that we should be similarly shining a spotlight on. So whether it's the arts or athletics, or I know we're doing special education,
Yeah, we could look at some of that. That's not a bad idea, see how our athletic program functions and how our art program functions. We could look into having those presented. So,
Great.
And it doesn't have to create more work for you guys if you want to invite, you know.
correct, yes. I would definitely have those people who are neck deep in that, because they know it so much better than I do. I would be, wouldn't do it justice. So I would certainly ask them to come and show.
All right, see no other comment, explaining for the public, we are not adjourning. As I announced at the beginning, we will be moving into executive session to discuss contracts and negotiations. Do I have a motion to move into executive session? Heather? Second, Lynn. Was that Lynn or Jamie? All right, Lynn. All right, everyone else, thank you for coming and see you next week.